Hi everybody, this is Reepiron, and today we're going to be doing a Puzzles & Dragons video on the beginner team building that I think will help you out if you are a beginner. This is for people who are very new to the game, who don't understand what is a good thing, what is a bad thing, how everything works, and just the basics. So if you're an advanced player or an intermediate player, this guide will probably not help you very much, but hope you enjoy it anyway. The first basic I would like to go over with building a team is to pick a lead that you are comfortable with using, and if you're new to the game, that is easy to use. So you may have something that's really good, for example something like Anubis, who has outrageous amounts of damage output but is very difficult to use, as opposed to just picking the starter, which has moderate output but is extremely easy to use. That would probably be a better choice for you. The second tip for team building is simply that you should build the team based around the leader, not based around the subs. Even if you have some good subs, but maybe they don't go with the leader and you're trying to use it as a lead, it likely won't work. For example, if you're using something like Tyrannos as your leader, but you have something like Hattori Hanzo that you really want to use, it probably isn't best to put it on that team because it just frankly doesn't help you out all that much, as opposed to possibly lower end but free things or just lower end fire monsters that would likely help you out more. Third tip is don't rely on the machine for things. This is what I see a lot of when I go onto forums and things like that have Puzzles & Dragons info. It's that somebody is complaining that they do not have the one monster that they need to make their team amazing. And it's usually something extremely rare from the machine. Now, yes, if you have something that is very rare that complements your team fantastically, then it's going to help you out immensely. But it is not always necessary. In fact, the majority of the time it isn't necessary. There are plenty of things that you could substitute for it. So don't rely solely on machine things. Free things can help you out just as much, sometimes even more, especially given the circumstance that you can get them much more regularly. And then the fourth and final tip here is build the team to its strengths and to try to minimize its weaknesses. So if your team is lacking in HP, maybe you should go with a secondary lead that complements your team but gives you that HP boost. You may be sacrificing potential RCV or attack with that, but it might help you out more in whatever particular dungeon you're trying to do. And same with if you're less on attack, less on RCV, maybe you need just more variety in your team because you have multiples and it's a no duplicates dungeon. Whatever the possibilities may be, just know that there is ways to get around your weaknesses. Every team has weaknesses and every team has strengths when built properly. This is completely unavoidable. So now that the four basic tips for team building are over, we're going to go into some teams that I have built that may help you. They are all very cheap and easy to use teams. There's 5 different teams. Each one is based on the element that they are. Some are a little bit more detailed than that, like they may have a secondary, but they're all really easy to use teams. They're all free teams as well. So even if you got absolute garbage from the machine, maybe this was your 5th Grimrock or something like that, you can still build a functional team that can get you through pretty much any of the normal dungeons, except for maybe the later ones, like Legendary Seaway and Legendary Earth, and possibly Divine Queen Sleepless Castle or Starlight Sanctuary. But they should be able to do just about any other in the normal dungeon set. So the first team I have here is a fire team. Now this team focuses mainly around the fire starter, giving your cards more RCV if they're dragons and more attack if they're fire. This is mostly focusing on the fire aspect, but if you wish and have more fire dragons, then that would likely be more beneficial to you. So I have Tyrannos as the lead. He's pretty standard. He's got some good stats. He's got just a good overall everything really, and he's easy to use. He's also got prongs, which help him take out some guys a little bit quicker. The second I have on this team is Echidna. Echidna is a great sub for almost any team, really, because she's probably the best of the healer girls. I can't remember what they're referred to as. But this upgrades from the Naga, and mostly because of her active. She has overall pretty high attack and pretty high RCV. Her HP is kind of on the low end. But her active is delays enemies for 3 turns, which can be very helpful, especially in just the normal dungeons. You can delay the bigger monsters much more easily and then get in 3 more turns worth of hits, which can help you a lot. The third on here is Gigas. Gigas the Great is a great sub. He's got huge amounts of HP. He's got pretty decent attack. His RCV is lacking, which Echidna and Gigas kind of go well together because one has a lot of RCV and attack, the other one has a lot of HP with okay attack, so they just kind of complement each other, as well as he can upgrade his active skill very easily just by fusing fire goblins to him. So you can have a very low turn skill just pumping you out fire orbs, which is what the team needs. Third on here is the reincarnated Phoenix Warrior. This upgrades from the Fire Mystic Knight. This one is going to be probably the hardest, or maybe the second hardest to get on this. Not because it is difficult to get a Fire Mystic Knight. It's actually very easy because you can get them out of very low-leveled dungeons that you pay for with coins. So you're going to have plenty of coins, so don't worry about that if you're new to this, thinking that you're going to have to spend real cash. No, you don't. Phoenix Warrior simply takes a lot of experience to level up to his max. That's why he's going to be probably the hardest, but he has probably the best overall stats out of everything on this team, with them being really balanced, with him having high attack, high HP, and high RCV for something that's free and fairly easy to get. And then the fourth thing that's on here is going to be the Red Golem, or the Red Mech, Jotun or Jotun. I'm not sure how you're supposed to pronounce it. He has extremely high hit points, which is pretty much what all the golems have. They have okay attack and they have pretty low RCV, but most of you want to have him simply because his active is useful. You can use his active to minimize the damage done to you by 50% for 3 turns. And then the very last thing I have on here is going to be your other lead, which is another fire starter, although there are plenty of other fire leads that I would recommend if you see somebody has them available. The first would be Krishna. Krishna just gives overall high stats and is a really strong fire. Next is Red Odin. Again, he just gives more HP to this team, which it is somewhat lacking in, as well as giving it attack and giving it the poison ability, which can be very useful against things that have outrageous amounts of defense. Third is Uriel. Uriel is one of the Archangels, and all the Archangels are just really strong, having really high stats, having just a very easy to use leader skill that just gives straight buffs to everything, and their actives are quite useful. The fourth on here is Ares. Ares is similar to Red Odin, just giving more stats, as well as he has really high stats himself. He doesn't have a poison feature like Odin, but he's still really strong. And the fifth and final lead that I'd recommend is Shiva. Pretty much in any form, Shiva is going to help out your fire team a lot. In his reincarnated form, probably not as much for this team, simply because then he doesn't give the HP buff that he does in all of his other forms, but it is the strongest of his forms, as well as it has the guard break on his active and a very low cooldown that you can just constantly spam to break something that has ridiculously high defense down to very low defense. Okay, moving from fire to water, we have this team. This team, again, consists of the starter, and the majority of these things are fairly easy to get. The water starter, again, like the fire starter, has the exact same leader skill, but for water instead of fire, which can be quite useful. And then we have a few different subs here. Water is actually fairly forgiving on its subs. Fire is probably the least forgiving on its subs that you can use, but here's a few. So the first sub here is the Cold Amberjack. The Cold Amberjack is overall a pretty strong sub and really easy to get. This sub you can get in a dungeon that you use coins to buy, and it is really strong, having high hit points, decent attack, but once again, fairly low RCV. It is a physical, which they tend not to have. But overall, it's a really good sub with a low active skill that you can constantly use that actually provides you heart orbs, which is somewhat of a rarity at early levels. Not a lot of things do that. The second sub on this team is Fenrir, the Torrential Knight. He is part of the Mystic Knight series. This is the water version. How we had the Phoenix Knight in the other version. This is the Water Knight, or the Torrential Knight. Sorry about that. Again, this guy is extremely easy to get, but he's very hard to level up. So this may take some time getting him leveled up, but once you have him leveled up, he's extremely strong and just really good overall, just like all the Mystic Knights are, and that's why he's on here. The third sub we have on here is the Blue Golem. The Blue Golem is just like the Red Golem, just he's for water. He still gives the exact same active, which is 50% damage reduction for 3 turns, which again can really save you in a lot of dungeon situations where somebody big is going to hit you really hard, so you half the damage and survive the hit, essentially. Again, the Blue Golem can be a bit difficult to get because it is a rare drop in early dungeons as compared to something like the Torrential Knight or the Amberjack, which are very common drops in their respective dungeons. The fourth sub that we have on here is Siegfried. Now this is Siegfried in his light form. You could also use Siegfried in his fire form, which is a water fire instead of water light. Either way, they're both pretty strong. This one can be a little bit more difficult to get because you likely won't be able to get it right away as compared to something like the Amberjack or the Torrential Knight or even the Water Golem, which you could get at lower levels. Siegfried you usually have to get from either a Descended dungeon, which can be more difficult, or get up to the normal dungeon that is called Hero's Hideout. At the end of the dungeon, you can either get Siegfried Berserk or Highlander, which eventually evolve into Siegfried or the Wood version. Overall, Siegfried is strong, having really high hit points, pretty decent attack. His RCV is somewhat on the lacking side, but overall, he is just a great sub. And then the last lead that we have over here is the other starter, although this one can, once again, be switched out for things that you might see other people using more often that are from the rarity machine that will probably help you out more. This team, once again, like the fire team, does lack HP. This one somewhat lacks RCV as well, but it does have plenty of attack, so if you're looking for things that have HP and RCV buffs for water, that could be useful. So here's a few. The first off is Hermes. Really in any of his forms, just like Ares or any of those gods really, they work really well with whatever element they are, and they will help you out quite a bit. Second is Blue Odin. Just like Red Odin, Blue Odin is pretty much the same but for water. Third is Gabriel. This is just like Uriel and all the other archangels. They're just really strong with their elements and just really strong overall. So another good leader to pick. The fourth is one called Whaledoor. This one is a little bit odd as not everybody has it. It is technically free and it's probably one of the strongest free things that's in the game, but it will give you bonus hit points for water as well as a huge attack buff if you have skills that you can use on a consistent basis to give him his attack bonus. So you'll be getting more HP and more attack. And then the fifth and final one is Lakshmi. This again is from the Indian God series, similar to like how I said Shiva was. I'm not sure if I actually said that, but he is. And they're all really strong with whatever element they are, pretty much in any of their forms. So just a really good secondary lead as well. All of these leads that I chose and that I'll continue to choose throughout are generally very easy to use leads. So hopefully they can help you out if your friends have them or if you just make friends in the game, you can use them. Our third team here is the green team. The green team is a little bit different than the other teams because yes, it does use the starter as its leader. But this team is entirely dragon, meaning that it has a higher RCV buff than the other ones, even though some of the others may have higher RCV depending on what you decide to put on them, because you could put multiples of pretty much any of the things I've said on your team and it would work just fine. So the first sub we have here is Zeal. Zeal is just the green Mystic Knight. He is very strong and very useful. I actually probably like him the most out of any of the Dragon Knights. I don't know why, I just do. Again, just high overall stats, just like all the Mystic Knights. I know I said Dragon Knights, sorry about that. Our second sub here is Draggy. Now this is the first thing I'm recommending that is actually a Descended boss, although Draggy is probably one of the easiest Descended bosses to do. So that's why I recommend him, as well as he's just very useful. Now, he can only go up to level 70 rather than 99 like everybody else on the team can. But his active is quite useful, delaying enemies for 1 turn, which is always useful. Having the delay is nice. It also gives your whole team 2.5 times attack, well, for dragons for 1 turn. Alright, the next sub I recommend on here is the Generate Earth Dragon. Now this evolves from the little green dragon all the way up into it. And the little green dragon can be difficult to get, as well as it's one of those rare drops, meaning it has like a 2% drop rate in whatever early dungeon it is in. So it can be a bit difficult to get, but it is really strong overall and just a good sub for this team. Now the 4th sub you may notice is just another starter of the green dragon, which actually isn't very hard to get as you get later into the dungeons where they drop the early starters very frequently. So you can use it, and it's really just strong overall. The main reason I chose this over others is simply because it is a green dragon, which is what the team was going for. Some of the other green dragons I found that you weren't necessarily able to get didn't really fill the spot quite as well, so that's why it's here. And then the second leader is another green dragon, although I would recommend you switch this one because this team is lacking in the HP. It mostly makes up for it with its high RCV and high damage, so it deals a lot of damage and can heal a lot, but it doesn't have a lot of hit points. So ones I'd recommend for the green team, and I'm going to try to pronounce this one, but I'm probably going to mess it up. Akadekazuguri is the first one I recommend because it gives you the HP buff that you want while still keeping your attack relatively high, like the green lead does. Next up is Michael from the Archangel series. Again, the Archangels are just really good and your team could benefit from it. Third is Artemis, another one from the Greco-Roman series similar to Ares or Hermes. It works out quite well, giving you just overall good stats. Fourth one is Parvati. Parvati from the Indian series, similar to the other Indian gods that I've recommended on here, is just overall really strong for this element and can help you out. That's why I recommend it. And then the fifth and last one is Ishtar. Ishtar is really strong and she is completely free. So that's why I would recommend her, although I don't know how many people really have Ishtar, which may be a problem for you, so the other ones may be a better bet for you, or simply just going with the green starter. It's your choice. Alright, moving on to the light team. Now light team's a little bit different as well, because the light team, I actually recommend the leads being descended things, which may dissuade early on people, but this team is quite strong. This team uses the Valkyrie, which is a descended monster. So you have to beat a descended dungeon in order to get it, which may be a little bit difficult for you if you're just starting. Although she is quite strong, giving 3 times attack for healers and gods. Now, I did make this light, but everything on the team is healers or gods, as most light things generally are healers or gods. Definitely not all of them, but most. The first thing I recommend is Verge. Verge is the light mystic swordsman, and if you've heard the other arguments about the swordsman, that's the reason why I put Verge on here, because they just have really high stats and a good overall active. Next on here is the King Shiny. Now the King Shiny is of the slime class, and it just gives you a huge damage buff, which is the main reason why it's on the team. Overall, its stats aren't that great, and it really doesn't do a whole lot for you besides just being able to activate it to get that 3 times attack, which can help you defeat certain dungeons. The third I recommend on here is the Holy Tornado Dragon. Holy Tornado Dragon is quite strong, having pretty good overall stats. It can be a little bit difficult to get simply because it is a rare drop from a dungeon, but it is quite strong and I'd recommend it. The fourth on here is the Angel. Now you can really upgrade the Angel into whichever ultimate you want, whether you want the double light one or the light water one, if you think that'll give you more versatility, but I chose the light one here, and it just has overall good stats for this team, which is why I recommend it. Now you may want a different lead for this team rather than a second Valkyrie, simply because this team does not have HP. So other light leads that I would recommend for this team would be the Archangel Raphael, because the Archangels are just really strong, and Raphael's just a really good secondary lead for this to give you the bonus HP and RCV that you likely need, with still giving you a little bit of attack. The second is Apollo. Apollo is from the Greek series, which also just gives overall good stats to whatever element they are, and he's the light one, so that's why I recommend him. Third one I recommend is Apocalypse. Apocalypse gives you the same damage that the Valkyrie will be giving you, assuming you're using this team and you haven't switched out certain things that may be better than what we have on here. It'll give you the same attack buff, but it'll give you slightly more HP, giving you 50% more, which will help you out quite a bit. The fourth leader I recommend is Hibami Udan, I think is how you say this. I don't know, it's a ramen bowl. This ramen bowl is actually completely free to get. It's in the same series that the Amberjack was in the Water Team guide. This one's a bit harder to get than the Amberjack simply because it takes a lot of time to get. But it, once again, gives you bonus HP. Fifth and final one I recommend that people will probably have is simply another Archangel similar to the one that we already have on the team. Specifically the light one, because she gives you bonus attack and HP, which is useful given that this team is lacking that. Once again, you can switch out subs or duplicate subs if need be. I would not recommend duplicating any of the slimes like the King Shiny, the Draggy, the King Batty, any of them. I would recommend just one if you're going to put it on the team at all, because they're just really low in stats, even though they're extremely easy to get. Okay, so the fifth and final team here is the Dark Team. Now, the Dark Team is going to be, once again, a little bit different than the others, simply because the leader is somewhat hard to get. You can get it at a low level because vampires are available, but they're generally rare drops at low levels. So, the lead is the vampire, specifically the Dark Water one rather than the Water Dark one. The Dark Water one is just better overall than the Dark Water one, or the Water Dark one. Sorry, I'm getting these confused already. And his leader skill is 2 times attack and 2 times RCV for dark attributes. This helps you out quite a bit. So, the first sub that I recommend on the team is Cyclone Devil Dragon. This one comes from the Little Dark Dragon. Similar to how I said the Little Light Dragon is also useful, this one is too. Any of the little dragons are actually quite useful for whatever element they go for, but overall, he's quite good. You can also switch him out for a lead with certain dungeons, and same with the light one, because their leader skill to lessen damage of a certain element is helpful. The second sub I have on here is the Double Dark Lilith. Now, I say Double Dark because there is a dark one, and there is a dark light one. But I believe the dark one will help you here. She just has really high overall stats. Specifically, her RCV is very high, which is quite useful. And her active skill is quite useful, giving you a small buff towards devils and poisoning the enemy, which again can be useful for things that just have an outrageous amount of defense but not very much hit points. Third sub on here is the King Batty, the purple slime, whatever you want to call it. This is simply to give you a bonus attack buff. This one can be switched out, like I said, with the other slimes, and I would not recommend more than one slime on any team because you're really just using it for the damage buff. And yes, even if you had all slimes and kept using them to get bonus damage, it likely won't help you as much as just having actual subs on the team. And then the fourth sub on here is Corpse Knight Gravis. Now, Gravis is a little bit strange to put on this team, simply because he is a descended dungeon. He is still free, but he is a descended dungeon, although his dungeon is generally considered one of the easier dungeons, so you can do it. And the main reason why he's on here is because he has massive HP to help this team live more. He does come at the cost, though, at having okay attack and actually having negative RCV if you don't have any pluses on it. The second lead I have on here at the moment is the other vampire, which is acceptable. This team does lack HP, though, which is why I'd probably recommend using a different lead, one that would help you out. For the first recommended other lead, I would recommend Archangel Lucifer. Again, just like any of the Archangels in the Archangel series, they work very well for their elements, as well as they just have really high stats overall, which is nice. The second lead is Persephone from the Greco-Roman series, similar to Apollo, Ares, Hermes, and Artemis. All of them are really good for their element and just give you buffs to that element, which is nice. The third that I'd recommend is Beelzebub. Beelzebub is quite nice because he pretty much just gives you the bonus hit points, but gives you the same amount of attack that the other vampire would have, which is really useful, just giving you more attack, as well as a lot of people tend to get him because he's not really the most difficult dungeon to do, but he can be one of the more annoying dungeons. Fourth one I'd recommend would be Awoken Vitra. Vitra gives massive amounts of stats to both dragons and devils, I believe, that are dark. Overall, he's a really strong lead, and if you actually have him, that's amazing. But just overall, he really complements his team. He probably complements it better than Beelzebub does if you can get people that are using him. It's just that Beelzebub is free and much more accessible to get and easier to evolve. That's probably why he's going to be showing up more than Vitra. And then the last lead I'd recommend is Labu. Labu is just really strong, having just massive stats himself, but just an overall good and easy to understand leader skill. His active skill can get you in somewhat trouble if you're not used to using it, but overall he's still very strong. Dark tends to have a lot of good, easy to use leads that people can get. So this has been my team building simulator guide thing. Hopefully it helped out anybody who's new to the game and just is wondering how to build a team. Maybe they have one or two good things, but they really don't know how it works. And like I said, all the things that I showed are completely free to get, and they are fairly easy to get. They may take some time or a lot of experience or maybe just some effort, but they aren't impossible for you to get. They're nothing like a Machine Zeus or a Machine Hera or something like that I'd recommend that just aren't going to help you out, because at that point you're already going to know how to play the game. You're going to know how to build the teams. Hopefully you guys found this helpful. I will be doing a series shortly here discussing different leader skills and just notable leads that use skills similar to it and just kind of dividing them into difficulty. So hopefully that's entertaining whenever the heck it comes up. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you guys have been having a good day, keep on having a good day. If you guys have been having a bad day, I hope this video made your day just a little better. I'll see you guys next time. Until then, stay cool and bye.